This is Echidna. She was half woman and half snake. The Greeks called her the mother of monsters because she gave birth to some of the most famous beasts in all of mythology, including Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the entrance to hell, and the Chimera, a horrifying creature with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and a tail that ended in a snake's head. But who exactly was Echidna, and why did she have so many kids? Let's find out. Hi everyone. Welcome, and please like and subscribe to Gorgon's Tales. The name Echidna probably isn't familiar to you, but if I told you she was also known as the serpent goddess, you might start making some connections. In Greek mythology, Echidna was the daughter of the Titan god Oceanus and his sister, the Titan goddess Tethys. This makes her a minor goddess, a member of the first generation of divine beings, putting her in the same category as Cronus, the leader of the Titans, Zeus's father, or Atlas, the guy condemned to hold up the sky for the rest of time. So while Echidna wasn't all-powerful, she was important. She wasn't some low-level monster either. She could choose how she appeared. Sometimes she was a beautiful woman. Other times she looked like a terrifying monster. So what was she like? What kind of kids did she have? And why are people still afraid of her today? To answer that last question first, we have to look at her kids. We'll get to them in a minute, but they were pretty monstrous. They weren't necessarily evil, though. Some of them were actually heroes, like Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, whom Echidna helped by giving him her winged sandals. But that doesn't change the fact that they were terrifying. Hydra had 5 heads, Typhoon was a giant with 100 arms and 50 heads, and Cerberus had 3 heads and a snake for a tail. And those are just the ones I mentioned before. You see, it turns out being a minor goddess came with one very unfortunate perk. Like all the other minor gods, Echidna was immortal, which meant she would live forever and never be able to escape her role as the mother of monsters. You see, when the Oracle of Delphi predicted that Gaia, the earth goddess, would bear a son who would overthrow his father, Cronus, leader of the Titans, Cronus decided he needed to do something about this prophecy. He ate each of his children as they were born, swallowing their life force and dooming them to exist within him for eternity. Rhea, Cronus's wife and the mother of the children, begged him to stop after the 5th child, but he refused until Zeus grew up, rescued his siblings from their father's stomach, and then the gods and the Titans went to war. During the war, Zeus took Echidna prisoner and forced her to mate with Typhoeus, a giant whose only purpose in life was to make babies with various goddesses so that more monsters could be born and fight for the Titans. Later, Zeus would free Echidna from her prison, and the two of them became lovers. Echidna bore 6 more children for Zeus, and none of them were minor deities. All 6 were giants, half children of Zeus and half children of Typhon, meaning they inherited their father's 100 arms and 50 heads. Obviously, these kids weren't destined to take over Olympus anytime soon, so Zeus chained them up and threw them into Tartarus, the deepest part of hell, where they remain trapped, even today. Then Echidna bore another son, a 3-headed dog named Cerberus, and then another, a creature with the head of a lion, the body of a goat and a snake for a tail. That was the Chimera. So now you can see why people were afraid of Echidna. Her kids were monsters, and that's not exactly something to brag about in polite company. But it gets worse. Not only was Echidna doomed to produce monsters, but she couldn't even keep them under control. Remember the Chimera? Yeah, well, one day the hero Bellerophon got on its back and stuck a spear in its rear end, killing it. Then Echidna found out what had happened and was furious. As punishment, she unleashed a swarm of snakes on Bellerophon, driving him from the city of Iolcos. But Echidna didn't stop there. She also birthed a pair of winged serpents that ambushed and killed anyone who tried to help Bellerophon, as well as a giant named Alcyoneus, who crushed and devoured the hero's horse. Only when Bellerophon reached the city of Corinth did he finally find sanctuary and peace. But let's go back to that moment when Zeus freed Echidna from her prison. After all, her story could have ended right there, but instead it continued on for a few hundred more years. Anyway, when Zeus freed Echidna, he gave her a choice. She could return to her old life and spend eternity with her father, Oceanus, or she could stay with him and become the queen of the underworld. Naturally, Echidna chose the second option, and she and Zeus ruled the underworld together for a time. But their relationship eventually fell apart, and Zeus began having an affair with the Titan goddess Metis. When Echidna found out about the affair, she was furious. How dare Zeus cheat on her with a member of the older generation? It just wasn't done. So as revenge, she went to Gaia and asked her to create a monster so hideous and terrifying that Zeus would regret choosing Metis over her. Gaia agreed, and the monster she created was named Typhon. He was the biggest monster Echidna had ever seen. He was huge and ugly, and he smelled like rotting meat and sulfur. Echidna brought Typhon to Zeus and demanded he choose her or Metis. But when Zeus looked at Typhon, he laughed. He thought Echidna was joking, and when she insisted she was serious, he simply grabbed her, threw her in his net, and pulled her close. Echidna spent the rest of her days trapped inside the net, screaming for Zeus to let her go. And he never did. However, there are different versions of the myth that say Echidna was a lot more helpful than that. In some accounts, she warned Zeus about the dangers of marrying Metis. You see, the gods knew that whoever was married to Metis would eventually be betrayed, and no one wanted that to happen. Apollo, Ares, Poseidon, Hades, all the major gods stayed away from Metis for this reason. But Zeus, blinded by love, didn't listen to any of the warnings and married the Titan goddess anyway. Soon after, Metis gave birth to Athena, and then she betrayed Zeus and tried to run away with the god Poseidon. Zeus chased them down, though, and punished them both. Metis was turned into a fly, and Poseidon became impotent. Echidna didn't approve of Zeus's treatment of his wife, so she fled to a cave in the Caucasus Mountains, where she gave birth to a son named Geri on her own. A year later, Zeus tracked her down, demanding she hand over her son so he could punish him for siding with Metis against him. But Echidna bargained with him. She offered to give birth to another monster, and in exchange, Zeus would spare Geri's life. Zeus accepted, and Echidna gave birth to the monster, Typhoon. Zeus was so impressed with the giant that he made him his son and gave him command of the winds. Meanwhile, Geri became the king of the Gigantomachy, the war between the gods and the giants. Like I said, there are a lot of versions of Echidna's story, and they all have one thing in common. Her relationships with the gods never worked out. In every telling, she either ends up trapped in a net, alone in a cave, or dead, forgotten in the underworld. Is there a lesson to be learned here? Perhaps. Just because someone is beautiful doesn't mean they're good. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching. Bye.